done, it's going to be Chris Olave and Darnell Mooney rest of season. One guy in Darnell Mooney, like you would never think we would be comparing the two of these players, and this is a pretty shocking graphic for most people, especially casual players who probably didn't know much about Mooney going into the year. I know Anthony was really high on Mooney. Right now, Mooney is wide receiver 12 overall and is averaging 13.9 points per game. Chris Olave, wide receiver 44. We know he was injured. 10.63 points per game. But I do want to be fair to Chris Olave. With Derek Carr, 13.8 points per game, and that's excluding Kansas City. Now, Raheed Shaheed is gone. So that also matters because he was there when Derek Carr and with Olave and Carr. So that matters. That matters. I think I lean Darnell Mooney rest of season. I want to check out the schedules, but what do you think? I mean, I know you're a big Darnell Mooney guy. Are you? Is he locked and loaded for you as like a fringe middle wide receiver too? Like, and you prefer him over Olave, or where are you at?
He pops at week 5, right? Darnell Mooney, 31.5 fantasy points against Tampa, and then he has a 2-week drought. And then he pops again against Tampa. Well, he played Tampa twice this year already, so you're not going to see them again. Sure. And he obviously goes for 18.6, 486, and 1 on 6 targets. I think my biggest issue here is we're starting to see Kyle Pitts heat up. These running backs are now hyper involved in the offense, especially Bijan Robinson as he's cooking. You still got Drake London, who was not even involved in this game yesterday. Is this an offense to where, can they all coexist and be productive on a week-to-week basis? Because that's my issue with Darnell Mooney. He's had 4 games out of the 8 that he's played with single-digit PPR points, and then the other 4, 17, 14, 31, and 18. So I think him being the wide receiver 12 is very volatile. And that points per game, yeah, that's your points per game. But in half of those games, you're under 9.6 PPR points. That's concerning. He's been more or less a matchup play outside of the Kansas City game. He gave us 14.6. He struggled against Pittsburgh. He struggled against New Orleans. In week 4, New Orleans was still playing okay. Carolina was a smash spot, didn't show up. And then Seattle, middle of the pack, they kind of minimized him. And then you go with my issues with Chris Olave. When it was Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed was starting to get some volume. And it's like, what the hell's going on with Chris Olave? Because in the first 4 games of the year, he was under 6 targets 3 times. And then he had that, 10 against Atlanta. And then since then, obviously, he's been banged up. But, 4 targets against Kansas City, played 49 offensive snaps. And then he had the 2 offensive snaps against Tampa. That doesn't really count. And then he plays this week, and he finally gets back on track, does Chris Olave, with 14 targets. Does that stay with Derek Carr? Or is that just because, hey, the backup quarterback's going to target your best guy? You would think, in theory, Derek Carr is smart enough to be like, all right, I don't have Shaheed anymore. The best thing I have is Chris Olave. Maybe he starts getting the volume. So I honestly think Chris Olave is the one I want.
Yeah.
Rest of season.
I'm kind of with you. Dallas, Philly, Atlanta with Derek Carr. Olave saw 6, 6, and 10 targets. That's fine. Target share wise against Dallas, technically it was 46% target share. They didn't throw the ball much against Dallas. 24, then 31 against Atlanta. And this Chargers defense is the number 1 defense to limiting fantasy wide receivers. And he had 8 catches for 107 and 14 targets. So I prefer Olave as well. He gets a really nice schedule for the next 3 games: Carolina, Atlanta, Cleveland with a bye. And then he gets Washington and again Green Bay. 2 teams that are susceptible to giving up points to the wide receiver position. And then Las Vegas in week 17, who might just roll over and die at that point. Granted, the Saints might not be playing for much either. But regardless, I kind of agree with you. I'd prefer Olave at this point. We're at the 7:35 mark. It's kind of late. Let's get to Paul and then Matt